right. Yeah. Let's do it, man. Let's do it. Let's get to it.
This
Can't
is
wait for the conversation.
I'm really excited about this. I I just picked up a part-time job, and so I all day today I've just been thinking about getting home and being about this interview. So I'm really looking forward to this.
Well, awesome. So,
So
what's the part-time job?
oh, it's brand new. It's brand new. They still like me at this point. So that's how new it is.
Okay. Hold on a second. That was me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are you?
All right.
Do you drink bourbon?
I don't actually. Don't drink alcohol.
Oh, nice. Is that
Yeah.
is that just a health conscious decision, a religious decision? What is the decision making behind that?
Health, religion,
Yeah,
and family history of substance. So
that's
I
fair.
chose beyond
That
not to go down that road.
that seems like wisdom.
Yeah. It has been it because truth be told, there were some times
Yeah.
when I
Well,
sure wish I had taken a drink.
yeah, I know. I was watching your live stream on New Year's Eve,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone had colorful things to imbibe. So I wasn't certain what that reflected.
Yeah, I think I had like some sparkling Martinellis or something like that.
Nice. I in recent years, I don't know what it is, but it was so funny. Here, you'll get a kick out of this, I think, or you'll
Mhm.
just think I'm an idiot, which is fine. You can also get a kick out of that as well. I was talking. I suffer from a lot of migraines, so I have chronic migraines,
Mhm.
and I was talking to my neurologist because I also have some other stuff going on, some autoimmune stuff. I think you do some stuff with thyroids, right?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have Hashimoto's and Addison's.
Mm.
And so I was talking to my neurologist about some of the other stuff going on. And I was like, I don't know what it is about wine, but it really helps me kind of just calm down at the end of the day. And he's like, it's alcohol. And I was like,
Yeah.
no, you don't understand. There's something about wine. There's something about the red wine that just kind of helps me mellow out at the end of the day. And he's like, it's alcohol. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I don't think you understand what I'm saying. I don't think I'm
It's
articulating clearly enough.
alcohol and the sugar.
Is it the sugar as well?
Yeah. Sugar helps to calm the body. And there's some interplay between blood sugar and cortisol, right?
Yeah. And I struggle with cortisol. That's an issue for me with Addison's.
So probably a combination of things.
Yeah. So it was just I think it was one of the funniest conversations I've ever had with a physician, because I am not at all like a WebMD type patient. Like I don't look anything up online. I don't try to figure anything out. I don't go to the doctor and say, here's the litany of things that I've discovered about myself. But this one, for some reason, I was just like, I don't feel like you're hearing me completely. There's something unique about wine. And it's just like, no, it's just the alcohol. So
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's probably a combination of a bunch of things.
Right. I imagine it is, none of which was what I wanted it to be, which was there was some kind of antioxidant or something unique about the red wine that did it for me. But yeah, he just laughed.
And is it just red wine?
I don't think it is. I think at the time I associated it with red wine just because it was something I would sip, and and to me, and you can probably imagine this in that, whether it's a cup of coffee or it's a cup of hot cocoa or whatever, there's certain warm drinks, or there's cold, whatever, or even food that's just comforting, right? It's either nostalgic or something like that. And so I think my guess is that there was a level of, I only drink wine when I'm winding down for the day. And so there was some combination, I might have a beer when I get home from work or something, or after mowing the grass or something, that isn't about winding down. It's just it's hot out. A cold beer sounds good, but
Right.
wine tended to be something I only drank in the moments in which I was starting the process of just winding down for the day.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I'm guessing that probably was more so, and I just wanted it to be something like I had
Hey man,
discovered
if it
something.
works.
That's right. That's right. I always say, so I also wear barefoot shoes. I don't wear the ones with the toes because those look funny, but I wear barefoot shoes. And someone was saying, that's really not a thing. It doesn't really do anything. I don't know if it does or not. And I'm just like, look, if I'm so weak-minded that it works as a placebo, I'm okay with that. I'm good with being a weak-minded human. That placebos work great on me. So,
Right. Hey, the placebo effect is amazing,
right?
So that's what I mean. Yeah, even if it's placebo, then if your mind says it, there you go.
Yeah,
Because
really
our brains will make our body do things that that we wouldn't anticipate.
Yeah. I think that's just, I think it's so incredible the way the body works.
Oh yeah, amazing. I mean, this machinery that we have, and we'll talk more about that as we get onto the show. But our bodies will keep us safe with so many extremes of cold, of temperature, of height, of pressure, and it just keeps going and going. And it's not until we expand beyond that tolerance that we get into trouble. I mean, because all the time, we're living from the time we're born to the time we die. Our bodies are in the process of protecting us through that passage.
Yeah, I had a therapist once who he was so helpful to me because it didn't bother him that in some way that some of the stuff I was experiencing, he was just kind of like, it's okay. The body's amazing. And you're experiencing this and you're processing this and it's all okay. And your body's doing this for your well-being and your body wants to survive.
Right. Because that's the goal. I mean, everything that it does, it is with the intention of keeping you alive. And even diseases, which sometimes we get angry because of the disease, but the disease is a process of the body trying to keep you alive. So we don't think about that often. Yeah.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I have with me tonight Dwain Woode, Dr. Dwain Woode, and this is an exciting time for me. So, Dr. Dwain, is how do you prefer that I refer to you?
Oh, here on the show?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, Dr. Dwain is fine. Dwain is fine. Hey, man, we're just kicking it right now.
All right. Well, so Dr. Dwain, I am getting a lot of echo. I hope it's not happening. Oh, I lost him. It was so short-lived. So let us give a minute for Dr. Dwain to join us back again. But Dr. Dwain is on with us tonight. We're going to have some conversations around faith and the way that religious trauma impacts the body. And all right, Dr. Dwain, how are you?
Good. I'm not sure what happened there, man.
It's okay. You just wanted to make a second entrance. I appreciate that. I'm a fan of second entrances. So as I was saying, Dr. Dwain and I, we're going to have some conversations around how the body is impacted through different things that we've experienced throughout life. But also, I'm really excited about the conversations we can have. In addition to this, I do want to make sure that anyone in chat, that you can ask any questions you want. This is a conversation typically around faith. It doesn't have to be that. It can be around any kind of questions that you have. We don't want to censor anyone or limit the questions you can ask. We just ask that you are kind, compassionate, and merciful to the other people in chat so we can have a good conversation. So with that being said, my spouse put in the chat all the things about you, your bio, and it is a litany of stuff. and it is awesome. The human that you are is incredible. So I don't know if you would like to share a little bit more. Our viewers can kind of look through that list and see some of the more specific details. But in a nutshell, how would you define or describe who you are as a human on this planet?
Man, that's a great question. And first of all, thank you for having me on. I've been watching your stuff, man, and I'm just so excited about what you guys are doing in the space. And I see Dr. Tana in the chat, and Dave, and I heard you guys. I listened to your one that you did on this past Monday, so that was an interesting conversation.
Oh, an MLK.
On MLK, I was like, man, I should have been on that show.
I would have loved it. That would have been fantastic.
But thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to coming on since we talked back in December or November. Anyway, but so glad to be here and glad to be able to participate. I am right now a human who is enjoying life. I couldn't say that 2 years ago, 3 years ago, but I'm enjoying life now. And I am excited to be in the space that I am. An endocrinologist, someone who is online, creating content, meeting people, doing what I'm doing right now here with you, Don, and just pouring into the community. That's my goal right now, educating, empowering, and encouraging people to take charge of their health, their life, and create.
Awesome. So we were getting feedback that you were echoing. So
okay, hold on. Let me make sure that
it might have been on our end. So we'll see if we fixed it. I made an adjustment on our settings, but you weren't echoing to me, which makes it complicated. Obviously, if I'm hearing you just fine and you're echoing to the audience, that makes it complicated. So please let us know in the chat if there is still some echo, and we'll get it fixed as best we can.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. So just briefly again, just I'm just in the space enjoying life right now, man. Just enjoying all the things I'm learning, and yeah, just meeting people and having fun.
That's awesome. So I know that you've been. I think you just kind of went on a vacation, or at least spent some time with your household, and I hope that was good and refreshing to you, and you got some R&R, because I imagine, knowing the litany of stuff that I've seen that you are a part of and that you've done, I imagine you need some R&R.
Oh man, it was amazing. We went, and for most of the holidays, we were here. I have a friend up in Nashville, so we went and visited them during Thanksgiving. But for Christmas, we were here, had lunch with the family here at the house. And then we took a few days and went down to Birmingham, which is just about an hour and 10 minutes south of us. And we stayed at this amazing place. I'm not promoting them, but it was right off the golf course. It was a castle. And
oh, nice.
It was quiet. I didn't have to get up early. I didn't have to go do anything. Just me, the wife, and my son. We took a little tour through around the city and did some fun things.
Are you a golfer?
I'm not a golfer. There's one of the docs trying to get me out.
Yeah,
but I'm not.
Yeah. I just find it brings every curse word I know out of me. Golfing, like it has some kind of pull or draw that allows me to swear like never before. My dad and my grandfather wanted me to learn golfing, and they took me golfing, and I'm better off like as a caddy. I think that's my calling.
Oh, you're probably too modest.
Oh no. There's no modesty there. That is 100% true. So Dr. Dwain, one of the things that is really important to a lot of the audience that tends to listen to our podcast or joins our live stream and stuff is that a lot of folks are kind of going through some tough times thinking about faith, right? And for them, whether it be, I think a lot of folks experienced that within maybe the 2016 election was kind of the pinnacle, the point of the moment that a lot of folks, particularly in this moment, white suburbanites really felt betrayed somewhat by their church, because so many evangelicals seemingly were setting aside some of the long-held views and moral principles that they had imparted or placed upon, unfairly or fairly, upon a generation, seemed to set them aside. And so I don't necessarily want to have a conversation about politics, but what I want to talk about is a lot of folks have felt like, as they're processing this, they're starting to feel things like shame and guilt over the things that they participated in that they didn't notice were harmful until it became magnified in that setting. Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
So one of the things that I think is important for us to talk about is that there's a cost on the body for that. So I grew up in a more fundamentalist setting, and I grew up with very strict black and white views about the world, about God, about faith. And I know that when some of those things began to crack and I started to ask questions about what it was I was experiencing or what I had experienced, that it created shame and guilt and harm to me. As a doctor, I know that this isn't necessarily specifically your field. Like, I often thought I was imagining the harm. And I don't know if you have any thoughts about that that you'd be willing to share.
Sure. I mean, you know, we have not for a long time been in a space where there has been so much damage caused by interpersonal relationships, politics, the social sphere, and it all really kind of came to a head with the elections that were, because there were so many things going on at the time, right? So we had the COVID thing that was going on, and people were afraid, they were unsure of what was going on. We were in the middle of this political battle that was happening, and just like other times, you know, and we were going to talk about this church hurt here in a minute, but just like other times, people take sides. People take sides because that's what we do as human beings. We don't really like gray, right? We want to be on one side or the other. And our bodies are designed, right, to maintain. And that's what I alluded to earlier. There's this word called homeostasis. So homeostasis means sameness. So within a certain range, our body keeps us within that range. And so when an idea comes, whether it's a true idea, whether it's a made up idea, and it challenges our sameness, our bodies revolt against that because it doesn't want to change, right? And our cortisol level goes up, our adrenaline goes up. Everybody's heard, you know, that phrase adrenaline, but all those hormones kick in because the hormones are designed to keep us protected.
Interesting.
And when those hormones come out, that's when we run into all kinds of other issues. And, you know, I'll get into that here in a little while. But the first thing is, it is a physiologic change that happens. It's not imagined. It's your body does not want that thing that just came into your mind, this new idea, to take root.
So is that meant for survival?
It is meant for survival, right? Because, you know, and you know, silly example, if you walk outside, Don, right now, and you see a lion, your brain says, hey, we got to get out of here, because if we don't, we're going to be lion food.
Yeah.
And so it
just
sends
so you know,
signals.
that's a real possibility here, because I live directly across the street from a zoo.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
The Toledo, you're in Toledo, right?
Yeah, the Toledo Zoo is literally across the street from my house.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So if you see a lion or a tiger tonight, yeah, this is what's going to happen. So your brain is going to send a signal throughout the system. And the goal of that signal is to mobilize as much energy as it can to get you away from to the lion or tiger, whatever you're trying to run from, right? So the cortisol that comes out is going to make your memory, make you forget stuff, because it doesn't want you, Don, to remember that your family is at the house. Because if you start thinking about the family, you divert energy from running. So it makes you forget. It gives your body, your muscles, your heart begins pumping more. The muscles get more energy. It mobilizes your sugar, and the sugar is now pumping. Heart rate goes up, and our thought process is with the intention of getting away. It's a survival mechanism. That's why sometimes people will get ulcers, because the body is shunting energy from the stomach, from the GI system, to run, to deal with whatever it is. Because there's no point in digesting food right now if we're trying to get away from the tiger.
That's really amazing.
Right? So it's a protective mechanism.
It's always so fascinating to me to see how the body responds, and it makes sense. But in some way, we're unwilling to acknowledge some of that. Sometimes we over spiritualize it, right? And especially in the church, right? That we tend to like see those moments of, oh, I'm not hungry, and then we make that into something else, as opposed to, no, there's a physiological response happening in your system.
There is. And you know, one of the things I talk about all the time with my patients, because I do diabetes, right? And people will say to me, and this is a little off topic, but with the same idea, people will say to me, oh, if I was stronger, then I could have not eaten that cake, that chocolate cake, or whatever it is, right? If I was a better person. So they equate eating the cake with being a bad person. They make it a moral judgment. Okay. Yeah. Well, let's walk through this process. There's this thing called decision fatigue. And decision fatigue said that if Don is trying not to eat chocolate, and I'm standing outside your door in the morning, and you're walking out the door going to work, you're not going to eat the chocolate, because you've already made up your mind that no chocolate, no chocolate, no chocolate. So I'm standing there. I can, throw chocolate all over you. You won't eat it. But on the way to work, you stop at the light, somebody bumps into you, got a little dent in your car. Now you're late for work. You get to work, the boss gets on you. All day you're making decisions, you're calling people, you're dealing with frustrating customers, or whatever you do at your job. If you're walking back through that door at the end of the day, guess what? You're eating chocolate. And so it had nothing to do with your willpower. It has everything to do with the hormones and the neurology and the biology that happened to you that day. And the same thing happens when we talk about stress and hurt and trauma. It's almost like a domino. Have you ever seen those? It's a cascade. That first domino goes down and all the dominoes follow it. And people are trying to stop the dominoes, but it's just a sequence.
So Tana said, I experienced decision fatigue so much. So what is then decision fatigue?
So decision fatigue says that if you're making decisions throughout the day, and that's that stress process, when you're walking back through the door, for our example, your body doesn't want to make any more decisions. So it defaults to the simplest thing. And the simplest thing is to just eat the chocolate.
Yeah. I think it is fascinating. One of the things as a pastor that I often am attempting to do for people is to delineate kind of what you were doing about, like, we make some things moral that are just morally neutral. That it's not moral that you are feeling this way, or that you're experiencing something in a certain way, but instead that's reality. And the morally neutral piece of it, or the moral implications of it, is something that's placed over top of it by someone either that you trusted, or a lie you believe about yourself. And it's such a hard thing to convince people of, because we've been so, whether in my circle with being a pastor, it's often indoctrination, right? That we've been indoctrinated with some of these things, that this is because you are a flawed human being, as opposed to no, it's not about you being a flawed human being. It's about the fact that this is the way the body works. This is the way nature takes its course, and you are just a participant in it. And it's really hard to move people that are on that perspective or experiencing that, to kind of move them off and accept that no, these are just decisions that one has to make, that there's not a moral um, compass attached to it.
Well, our concept of God and how God interacts with us has so much to do with all that you just described, right?
Yeah.
I'll tell you, there are some things that happened to me in my life, and I swore that the reason they were happening to me was because I was a bad person back here, and so now God is making sure that I know that that I did wrong, and so he's making sure. And my question during that time was, okay, well, how long do I have to be punished? Like how much do I have to do to make up for that thing that I did? And so flash forward, like I said, I am enjoying life. I'm enjoying life because I have changed, or my concept of how God interacts with me has changed.
Yeah.
But if you've been indoctrinated in a certain way, and that's the kind of God you have, it's no wonder that people leave the church, whether it's church hurt or not. I mean, people leave the church because they're like, well, I don't want to be associated with that guy. He's
right. Yes.
So
Yeah, I think that one of the pieces that I've noticed a lot in the last few years, and I think a lot of this, it's interesting to me. So I have several friends who are people of color who, when I talk to them about white theology, they're like, yeah, I'm not sure why you guys believe that stuff. Because for me, like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Dr. James Cone, and he's kind of like the father of Black liberation theology, and I'm reading his stuff, and it's so profound to me as a white male, middle-aged white male in suburbia. And to me, it's so eye-opening. And what it ends up doing is creating a huge amount of shame and guilt. Now, for me, I have been studying this for 20 years, and so that part of my journey has subsided. But like I was saying earlier, because, and as you had mentioned, because of some of the catalysts that exist in recent years, particularly around politics, a lot of white suburbanites are going through this as they're processing, and what they're experiencing is not new. It's existed within, whether it's Paulo Freire in some of the books that he wrote about the oppressed and the rhetoric of the oppressed, and whether it's Dr. James Cone or other liberation theologians throughout the years. This isn't new, but it's so new to a lot of white evangelicals, and it's leaving them spinning. And they don't know where to go. They don't know how to land this. They don't know who to talk to. And it all feels so foreign. And what's happening is it's creating this domino effect of shame and guilt, self-hatred, etc. And trying to communicate to folks that, if just pause, let's talk about these things. Let's work through these things. Um, yes, we may have contributed to harm. And let's be honest, not may have, we have contributed to harm as white evangelicals in the US. And to acknowledge that isn't to say that there's not redemption and that there isn't a way forward. But unfortunately, for a lot of folks, they're just throwing away their faith because they can't handle the trauma it's causing. And so their response to the trauma is to abandon what's happening.
Yeah. The black white issue continues to be an issue, I think, because and this is a definitely oversimplification. I think it continues to become an issue because everyone wants to be right.
Yeah.
Like, I want to be right, and Don, you want to be right. And if you're the white evangelical and I'm the black, Pentecostal, or even taking it out of the church and taking it into the society, right? Each of us wants to be right. Now, there are truths on both sides.
Absolutely.
There is truth that there has been harm. There's truth that there's been suppression. There's truth that there's been, and we can go down the list and this and this. There's a truth there. And acknowledging the truth does not diminish you. Right. So there's almost like this revisionist history that we want to create. And that itself is a catalyst for the other side saying, no, we're going to make sure that this wall gets built so that everybody knows that this monument is something that happened for truth. Like the Bible says, God told the children, you're going to build these stones and you're going to teach them to your children, and on and on and on and on. Right. So we want to build these monuments to say, okay, this is what happened. And I get it. But both sides have to understand that unless they are willing to acknowledge and say, hey, this is what happened.
Yeah.
And then, okay, it happened. What do we do now? What do we do going forward?
Right.
And until we have that conversation, it's not the relationship is not going to be better.
Yeah.
I was talking to my cousin earlier this afternoon. He's a pastor. I was telling him I was going to be on the show, and we talked through so many different things. And one of the conversations we had was this idea in the church that we're so concerned about the law that we miss and we lose the people. Right. So we've got these structures, and each church has theirs. And in order to be this denomination, these are the things you've got to do, and these are the things you've got to believe. And yeah, I get it. And so someone comes in and they don't fit all of those. Right. And so we're like, no, you're not one of us. So we kick them out, but we have no way of reconciling that. There's no heart in it, if that makes sense. So, so you got me on. I went on and on and on.
No. I love it. It reminds me of the quote that says something to the effect of, "We'd rather be right than kind." And I think that's so true so often, unfortunately. So Tana has a question. She says, "Are there ways to interrupt?" And I can tell I'm echoing. I'm not sure why it's echoing again. I thought I fixed it. But are there ways to interrupt your bodily reaction to something? For example, I have a tendency to cry pretty easily, and I hate when I can't stop it in professional settings.
Yeah. So there are a couple of things that we need to talk about as we delve into that area. So number one, and as we've been talking about hurt, there's this word trauma, and then there's this word trigger. Okay, so the trauma is the event that happened, whatever that is, and there can be physical, there can be psychological, and trauma can be divided. It's acute, it's chronic, and it's mixed, right? So we can go through all of that. But there's this trauma that happened, and if we're putting Tana's idea into what we're talking about, there's this trauma that happened, and so now there's a trigger. So the trigger is anytime you smell something, feel something, remember something, hear something, you return, not because you're not here today. We're not in 2023. You've gone back now to whenever that thing happened. So that's what a trigger does. And the exact same neurochemical cascade that happened back then is what's happening now. Okay. So often we get upset, and it happens in our relationships all the time, right? So we're talking to your husband and wife or brother, sister, whatever, and they say something and you go crazy and they look at you like, well, all I asked you was, did you want some ice cream?
Yeah.
But it had nothing to do with the ice cream that they talked about. It's like back when, when I was a kid and I wanted, somebody asked me for ice cream, it was with an ulterior motive, and this is what happened. And so we go down that entire process. So the first thing to understand is that those things do happen, and it is very, very hard, Tana, in the moment. If you've not acknowledged, if you've not dealt with that, for that trigger when it happens, you go directly, and it's those dominoes once again. Whoop, right? Something happens over here, and before you know it, you're down the road. So the thing that we've got to do, if we're intending to break those cycles, is we've got to understand where they're coming from, right? That's the first thing. And then we've got to begin working on things and ideas that will trigger us to go down a different pathway. Notice we're replacing a trigger with a different trigger.
That's brilliant. I love it.
Right. And that may take therapy. It may take, people do meditation. They got support groups. They've got all those different things. And there's a host of things that can happen. But being in that trigger, unless you are working to fix it, it's hard.
Yeah. And it's so fascinating to me because what you're saying is not just sensible, but it's so much kinder than the way we talk to ourselves. It's so much more understanding and gentler and merciful to our own being. Like what you just said, just it makes so much sense, but we have so much outside noise and outside things pressing in on us that it's, to me, it's not shocking, but it is refreshing that kinder, gentler, more merciful ways of treating ourselves and possibly others, I would say, is actually the best way to deal with much of what is so traumatic in our life.
Man, Don, you said a mouthful right there, right? Because our faith is designed for that. That's what our faith was designed for, right?
Yeah.
So we've created these structures for whatever reason, so that we have the organization. But the stuff that goes on within the structure is not supposed to resemble the structure. It's supposed to resemble the person, God, Jesus, whoever, right?
Yep.
The person that is telling us, hey, I want you guys to love each other.
Yeah.
Right? I want you to be kind to each other. I want you, and I'm going to use some terms here for people who don't get on me. This idea of turning the other cheek.
Right.
You know what that was for? It wasn't just to let people beat up on you. It was like, because at the time, that's not what was happening.
No. It was
right?
it was confrontational.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
absolutely.
Here comes this guy, Jesus, who comes along and he's watching all this stuff that's going on and saying to them, you have the structure,
Yep.
right? You guys know all the law, but you're missing the weightier part of it. Right?
Yeah.
To love justice and mercy and take care of the orphans and the widows and just be nice to each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I often found I love that passage about turn the other cheek, because for most of us within Christendom, at least in America, we're not often taught the culture and the context of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, Jesus specifically says right cheek, right? Like, there's a reason he names which cheek you're struck on, because it means that the person backhanded you because they wouldn't use their left hand to hit you, because their left hand was used for, wiping. And so they would have hit you with the backhand. So they would have backhanded you, which even today still has connotations of condescension and less than, to backhand someone. And he's like, if someone does that to you, turn and give them the other cheek. Make them hit you with the inside of their hand. And there was a part of that teaching that was allowing an individual who was in a setting where Rome was oppressive and holding Israel as second class humans, right? To say uh, that you don't have to be just a welcome mat to the empire, and that you can, because it was also illegal. That same passage, it was illegal for Roman soldiers to make someone carry their packs for more than a mile. And so he's like, if they ask you to carry their pack for a mile, just keep walking, just keep going, and and you're gonna all of a sudden have these Roman soldiers begging you to stop walking with their pack. Um, and I do think there is something really profound. Obviously, as a Christian, I think there's a lot of things very profound about the teachings of Jesus. But the teachings of Jesus was so frequently about self worth, self value, belief in yourself, and also the love then of the people around you that might be different than you, that they also have value and worth. And I feel like, particularly in recent years, the rhetoric around faith um, has been anything but that. And it's been one of condescension, it's been one of othering, it's been one of minimizing or using fear about the unknown of the other. And I've seen that weigh so heavily on people of faith who, as you say, were kind of pursuing this person of Jesus who has this idea of justice and mercy and compassion, yet the entity, the church in America, the white church in America particularly, is not exemplifying that. And so a person's left to deal with, have I just gotten this wrong all this time? Is this not who Jesus actually was? And it's really sad.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that recent politics and COVID has done is that it's made people kind of rethink a lot of things, and
Yes.
people are no longer, because they're like, man, this we missed a bullet, right? We you know, there's this thing that was going on, and you know, doesn't matter which side you're on. You're like, do you realize, Don, that for a period of time, the entire world shut down? I mean, stopped. And people are saying to themselves, wait a minute, I've been tolerating this stuff for so long, whether it's in your marriage, whether it's on the job, whether it's with your health. And they're like, I don't want to do this anymore. And so they're looking and they're searching. And this would be a perfect time for us as Christians to say to everybody, hey, let me tell you about this guy. Let me tell you about what he taught me. Let me tell you about how he fixed me. Let me tell you about how he changed my life. But we miss those opportunities, and we miss them not just because of COVID and so forth, but we miss them every single day to give a kind word, to give a thought, to extend a hand. And as I'm talking to myself as well, right? Because you know, I see opportunities sometimes, like, man, I got to get to work, right? I mean, whatever the reason is,
Right.
that we don't take time. And so we're living these almost, I don't want to say isolated, but isolated lives that no one is speaking kindness into. And so we become a little bit more solemn, right? So we're like, well, I'm not getting it, so I guess I shouldn't expect it. So what's just happened is that we've turned, well, for whatever reason, that person from someone who's now seeking to connect, they're like, okay, I got to step back a little bit because I keep getting hurt because I'm expecting something, I'm not getting it, so let me not expect it anymore.
Yep. And and I think part of it's because there's a sense of fear or a weight that was created about talking about such things,
Mm.
right? That in some way the world is dependent on Don to behave in a certain way for it to be healthy. At least that's the church I was brought up in, right? Like you are Jesus to people, and I think there's truth in that. But I also think it's a unfair weight that has been put on people, that I watch people walk away and they feel shame, they feel guilt. And I'm not sure that what Jesus in the Bible had in mind was shame and guilt. Instead, I think it was freedom, it was joy, it was anti-empire, it was fighting against oppression, the freedom of marginalized individual, liberation of all people. But it's pretty sad the way that it's been communicated.
So I went through a pretty dark period of my life several years ago, and I pulled away from family, friends, church, right? And now I'm thinking back to that period, and I'm thinking, hey, the church was supposed to be the place where I could go, right? And I'm wondering, I've been processing this, hours of therapy and lots of money later. And I'm wondering, why did I not take advantage of the place where I was supposed to be able to be helped? And this idea of shame comes to mind, right? Because I have to be good. And it's the whole old thing that happens. You go to church and I see you, Don, and you come, you're walking in church. Hey, Don, how you doing today, man? And you're like, oh yeah, I'm good. Yeah, the Lord's blessing. I'm living in Jesus.
Living the dream.
I'm living the dream all the time, man, knowing that when you leave church to get back to your house, that you're living in hell.
Yep. The weight of the world.
The weight of the world is on you. But we refuse to do that because of the way that the church traditionally has responded to certain things.
Yeah.
Right? Because we know the pushback, the disconnection that we have. And we have these words, like in my church, we say we disfellowship you. Do you know what that really means? You know what that phrase means?
Yeah.
That means that we're cutting you off. Yep. And then we don't have a place to reconcile. We don't have a way to reconcile. And so people traditionally over the years, and people ask the question, well, they didn't do that to you, or they didn't do that to that person. But I've been in the position where I saw them do it.
Yes.
To other people. So I'm like, well, they're not going to do that to me. So I'm not sharing my stuff. I'm going to buck it up, got my Bible into my hand, and come to church every day and put my offering and my tithe in the basket, and I'll go back home and I'll deal with it on my own.
Yes.
But just like I do medicine, and the people who come to the hospital are not the people that are okay.
Right.
It's the people who need to be at the hospital. And, we use that analogy all the time, that the church is supposed to be a hospital for sick people. But no, what we've done is we've created it as the country club.
Yes. Or the modeling
people who are
agency.
good, those are the ones who come. Everybody else, you got to go, down somewhere else.
Yeah.
So,
it ends up being really heartbreaking, because I think that what the church has to offer, when it's functioning at its best, is that space in which people can actually find rest and healing. They can find a space in which an individual is able to be cared for, to experience mercy, to experience, and when I say healing, I'm not talking necessarily miraculous. I'm just talking about they can be heard, because for a lot of us, we've never been heard in our life. Like we've made noise, and people acknowledge the noise that's coming out of us, but we've not been heard or understood. And I think that what breaks my heart as a pastor is that the church is no longer and I'm saying it as a blanket statement. I hope that there are churches that defy this. I hope my church defies this. But there's no longer churches that when you walk into is a space that catches you as you're falling.
Mm.
And as you're just trying to survive life. We've been talking about, like, sometimes our body just is just trying to survive. Well, you and I, oftentimes through most of our days, we're surviving. And I think that the way that I read the scriptures is that God had in mind that the world, other than those who sit in power and complete power for that matter, the rest of the world is just trying to make it, is trying to keep their nose above water. And that in some way God is asking those of faith to be the net, to catch people, to let them recover so they can continue surviving, and potentially thrive if done well. And I don't think that the church does that very well, because the church would rather, in my experience, promote perfection than embrace those who are hurting. And it's so counter to anything that I read. And I don't blame people for leaving faith. I don't blame people for giving up on Jesus, on God, on the Bible, and just throwing it all away, because all the examples they have seen and witnessed are ones that are condemning, finger pointing, finger wagging, shame filled. And so when they walk away from those things, it uh, it makes sense to me. But it's also really sad, because I believe that if some of those, if people had the opportunity to see what faith could be as this net, what God could be as this net, what the Bible could be, what people of faith, even if there was no conversion, right? I'm not interested in conversion. I'm interested in the well-being of my neighbor. And it just breaks my heart, Dwayne, that's just not what the church. I mean, when you say evangelical in the world today, no one thinks faith, they think politics.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's crushing.
Yeah. But you know that idea that you just described goes way back into the Old Testament, right? So people think
You
that
got
God
me preaching, Dwayne. Sorry.
people think that God chose the Israelites because he liked them better.
Yeah.
Okay. But God chose the Israelites because he needed a people to show him to the world.
Yeah. So do you know the rabbinic tradition around that? I think you'll find that if you don't know it, I think it
No,
fits exactly
go
with
ahead.
what you're saying. So
Mhm. Okay.
the
Yeah.
rabbis said that God first went to every other nation,
Mm.
every other people group, and they said no. And that Israel was the last group, and they were this small wandering people, and God
Mhm.
went to them, and they said yes. And I
Wow.
love that for the humility of the mindset. I also love that for the fact that they don't think that they were chosen as some, like, moral righteous group, but instead it was more so this thing of, like, okay, this is what we have. And God, and I don't know, there's just something really beautiful to me that Israel, the rabbis, imagined that that they were the last choice, not the first.
No, but it's beautiful. And that idea of the responsibility, right? That now places on the person who's chosen to represent God
Yes.
is, I mean, that is profound, right? So it's not okay, let's be an exclusive club. It's okay, we are really the servants of
Yes.
the rest of the world.
Yes.
And that's where we need to be. And you know, as we talk about people who in the church are hurt, that's one of the reasons I think this stings so much, because we're being traumatized, and I'm going to use that word. You being traumatized in the place that's supposed to be the place that shelters and makes us whole,
Yeah.
or helps to make us whole, because you know God does that. But yeah, you don't understand what I mean.
So one of the things, Dwayne, that ancient Jesus, future faith, like the kind of the heart around that is, so Constantine converted in about the 4th century and made Rome a Christian nation. Prior to that, everything about Judaism and even the first couple centuries of people that believed Jesus to be the Jewish Messiah was a marginalized people that
A
God
cult.
was saying, and that God was saying, I have your back against the oppressor and against empire, and gave hope, right? And then when Constantine became a Christian, there was no need for physical safety. So salvation changed from being about physical safety to being about spiritual, saved from death, saved from hell, because no one needed to, Constantine didn't need to be saved from anyone. People needed to be saved from Constantine, and that's not a good message for the emperor. And so all of a sudden, Christianity became about allegory as opposed to physicality. And as early as the 2nd century, Irenaeus, who was a Gentile who started teaching Christian and became a Christian theologian, he started saying, anytime you talk about the Bible in physical terms, such as physical safety, like Moses in the Exodus, that you were talking like a Jew. And that was the beginning of anti-Semitism in the reading and understanding of Scripture, and has been propagated since. And it's why still today, when people say, "Why did Jesus die?" It's not about physical things. It tends to be about spiritual things. Yet Jesus, in ancient times, prior in his lifetime and prior, it would have been about physical things. It would have been about the salvation and the safety of marginalized communities who were being oppressed and conquered and abused by those in power. And faith was about being a person who did not stand by and watch that happen. And imagine that's if we went back to that.
Beautiful. That, I mean, we would radically change where we are. So I mean, so the question then becomes, though, so here we are, and we've got people all over the place. There are groups, there are Facebook groups, there are support groups. Everybody's talking church hurt. The question is, what do we do? Right. So and when I say what do we do, it is a huge problem. And I don't think, let me say it a little differently. There are people who still don't believe in church hurt, for example. Like they say, oh, you just, that was, somebody hurt your feelings, get over it.
Suck it up, buttercup.
Suck it up, right? But we don't get that however small you may think that trauma was to you, it had a profound effect on that person.
And you're going to pass it on.
I think on your show that you guys did on Monday, or I believe somebody was talking about the effect of a person saying something to you, or maybe another podcast. Sorry, a different podcast. But I was in 6th grade, and my 6th grade teacher pulled me aside for a minute, maybe, or less. And he said something to me. Okay. I'm not going to tell you because we're going to do a talk about that. He said something to me, 6th grade. Okay. And my son is 13. And so 2-3 years ago, I was talking to him and I was telling him something. My wife said, "Why do you keep telling him that?" And I said, "Well, when I was in 6th grade, my teacher told me this, and I don't want him to be in that same situation." Now, I'm 55 years old. Gonna be 55. And that 1 minute conversation that I had with a guy who probably doesn't even remember having that conversation with me has been with me all of those years. And I am now teaching that to my son.
Yep.
Right. And so when we talk about solving the problem and solving all these issues, That's what we're up against, because it has been ingrained, right, in generation after generation. But it's not until we educate and we all decide that, hey, we are going to follow the manual. And when I say the manual, I'm not talking about your church manual. We're talking about what the guy who came to save us said. Hey, love each other, do good, pray for those who right. So he's giving the Beatitudes. It's not until we do that that this begins to get better. And then we, just like we were talking about black and white, we have got to admit the wrong that's happened. But sometimes when we admit wrong, we think that that means something about us, right? I was doing I do some genealogy, and I was researching my family, and I found this gal over in Europe, which is where some of my folks, well, the people who owned my family hailed from. And I was trying to get some information, right, about where my family originally came from. And so we were corresponding, and I said, "Hey, I'm Dwayne, and this is what the information I want to get." And she stopped communicating with me.
Yeah.
Because I'm assuming she felt that, okay, he's trying to get some, I don't know what she thought I was going to get. But we don't want to acknowledge the people who in the church who may have caused hurt. We look at it and it's like, man, if I say I did it, then I don't know what's going to come to me or what's going to come against me. So let's just put up this stone wall and let's just kind of ignore it. And the people who got hurt, they'll go figure something else out, and we'll keep going along. But we can't keep going along, because more and more people are leaving, more people are getting out, and they're influencing other people to say, wait a minute, no, I don't have to be here. I don't have to tolerate this.
Yes.
So anyway,
yeah,
there you go.
What you
I mean,
said,
I know I took the tangent there and just went all around the world.
oh, you have no idea. I am enjoying every bit of this. But it did remind me of Abraham Heschel said, "Some, only some are guilty, but all are responsible."
Mm.
And to me, that's the part that I don't think we're good at, right? Like, if you walk into a space of white people and say white privilege, there's a defense mechanism that goes up, because they imagine, because what happens is the imagination then goes to, I what you're saying is, I didn't I didn't do anything to get here. And that's not what's being said. What's being said is that you had a little bit of a head start, or a large head start, depending. And so, yeah, you might have worked hard to get where you're going, but you immediately had some level. And it's interesting to me, because, as you were saying, like, you were communicating with this individual and they just stopped responding, or just didn't respond. There is this weird thing where, as opposed to just acknowledging that harm happened, and it exists, and I can be a part of the restoration, I can be a part of the reconciliation, I can be part of the redemption, we just bury our head in the sand.
Yeah.
And to me, I think that's because we're not taught well. And as a person of faith, the church definitely doesn't teach that well, right? The church definitely doesn't teach it in a meaningful way that says, that our role here in this world as a person of faith, particularly within Christendom, in my experience, right, is that my goal in every day is to bring about as much reconciliation, redemption, and mercy as possible. A successful day in the life of Don as a person of faith is that I saw redemption happen at some point, or I saw reconciliation happen at some point. And that is not, instead, we've made it about sin management. We've made it about, you avoided doing something wrong. But that just makes you neutral. If you avoid doing something wrong all day long, that doesn't mean you did anything positive. You just didn't do anything. Like, I could sit in my bedroom and not move out of my bed and be morally neutral on the sin management scale. I've not done what I believe faith has called me to do.
But Don, I mean, take it a little further than that, right? So,
Please,
so
let's do
if
it.
you avoided not doing something wrong, how much energy did you expend on not doing something wrong?
Right. Yeah.
Right. I mean, because that's a big part of it. That we expend so much energy trying not to do the wrong thing that we end up not doing anything at all. Right. So that we talk about the fear, the response, right? Everybody talks about the fight or flight.
Yeah.
So you either run or you fight. There's a third one. It's fight, flight, or freeze.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And often we find ourselves in that third one where we're just so afraid of anything that we don't do anything at all.
Yeah. And this is what's so compelling to me so my expertise, if you can call it that, is in Second Temple Judaism. So ancient Christianity is where my expertise is. Pre-Constantinian, that's my wheelhouse. And it's interesting to me because it was impossible to be a person of faith in isolation in ancient days. You just couldn't. But yet you can, in the way that Christendom has evolved over these last couple thousand years. I mean, we've turned Jesus into, personal savior, personal salvation, and it becomes personal when everything that we see prior, like within Second Temple Judaism and further back, is all corporate. You can't experience faith in isolation. Yet most of what we see today is hinged on or built around personal. One time I asked in a conference I was speaking at, I said, can anyone give me an example of something personal that isn't just self-serving? Because I'm thinking like personal trainer, personal assistant. And someone said, this guy, Ben, I told him, this was like 10 years ago, I said, anytime I mention this, I'll quote you. So his name was Ben. He said, personal hygiene. I was like, okay, that's the one personal adjective thing that does impact others and others are grateful for.
Mhm.
But that's what we've done. We've made this about a personal faith that that is built on the concept of love your neighbor. How do you how do you stay so isolated and personal on a faith that's built on activity of like being active and going out and caring for the person next to you?
Yeah, yeah. That they don't go together, do they?
No, they're oil and water.
But we try so much. Um, so so Tana said, sin boldly.
Yes.
Sin boldly. Sin management, good one. I have never heard that before. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what we do. We manage our sins.
Yep.
And then we compare. It says, okay, Don did 2 number 5 sins, and I did a number 3. So I guess I'm higher up on the pole than he is. So he, because today, his sins were heavier than mine, and then we go back and forth, and that I think sometimes is where the whole idea of church hurt comes in, because we're so. It's almost that it's the whole idea of like a bully, right? The bully has to, in order to feel good about themselves, the bully has to put somebody down.
Yep.
And so in the church, if we're in the business of sin management, we have to find other things that are that we think are weightier. So we've got to grade the sins. We've got to give them weight. We've got to be able to categorize them and figure out who has how many of this one versus that one. So that's one idea. But then the other idea, I think, is the one we've been talking about so far, is that people just don't get it.
Right.
They haven't been taught. They haven't been taught how to just love somebody. You mentioned about just saying hello to somebody and being nice to them. We go to people, quote unquote, the people who are out of the church. We go to them only when we want to bring them into the church.
Yep. Yep.
We don't just go to be friends to say, hey, hi Don, what's going on, man? I just moved in next door to you. Just wanted to come over and say hi. Right? You're living next door to them for 5 years, and then your church has some kind of whatever event, and then you go next door and to invite them. They don't want to come because you've been sitting there. Why would I come to your church?
Yep.
You're right next door and you haven't spoken to me.
So Dwayne, let me share some with you that I think is so important, especially when we're talking about things such as sin. Right. So the Hebrew term for sin is the definition is literally an archery term meaning missing the mark, which in itself implies that you are attempting to hit the mark.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a toddler coloring in on a coloring book, and they get outside the lines. We would never turn to that child and say, "You're a horrible artist. You should never do this again. I'm so embarrassed by your existence." The idea of sin in ancient scripture was that we're attempting to live in a manner that honors God, and we fall short. And God is there to help us aim better. God is there as the parent of the toddler who colors outside the lines and hangs the picture on the refrigerator, not as condemnation, but instead to be like, you did a great job, and I believe you can do better the next time you do this. And if only the church actually taught the biblical concept of sin instead of the Dante or the Milton concept of sin that came later. And if only the church taught this way of thinking that we are all striving to be good human beings. And the idea of sin, it's kind of like, we have speed limits. And then you have like the Autobahn that doesn't have a speed limit, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't overspeed on the Autobahn.
The Autobahn.
So the Bible is like a speed limit that says you can safely travel at this speed on these roads. It's not meant to cause harm. It's to create safety. It's to create beauty. It's to create good. And so when we think about the idea of sin, we've made it this thing that we've let God down. And I would argue as like, and I hate that the church loves to use sports analogies, but I just can't think of a better sports analogy. But if like you're playing basketball on a team and someone misses a basket,
Mm-hmm.
you don't stop passing them the ball because they missed the mark. You don't stop letting them participate. In fact, there's a certain level of expectation that you're going to miss half the shots.
Right.
And yet in Christendom, and what we've done as people of faith is make people feel so guilty for missing the shot that we stop passing them the ball. And we tell them to get off the court. And we tell them that they're worthless and that God hates them. And to me, that might be one of the most offensive things that we've done in Christendom. And it has caused so much trauma.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Man, you should start a church. I'd come.
I might do that someday.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Dr. Dwain,
Mm-hmm.
I brought you on to talk about trauma in the body, but I also knew that you're just a really wonderful human being to talk to from my interactions with you. So I'm glad we went this route. But is there anything that you would say to those individuals who feel that they are suffering or are suffering from trauma that comes from spaces of faith?
Wow. Yeah. So yes, there are several things I want to say. And as you asked that question, my brain just went everywhere. But the first thing that I want to say to if you're out there, if you've had experienced church hurt, I want to say to you that you have the right to feel the way you feel.
Oh.
Right. Now, the person who hurt you may not understand what I'm saying right now, but that's okay. But you have the right to feel the way you feel. because no one can tell you how to feel. Something happened and your body responded, your brain responded. And there are neurochemical things that are going on. There are hormones that are in play that continue to work long after the event happened. And so right now you're out there and you feel like you're alone. You are not alone. You can turn and find someone somewhere in your local community that has experienced it. So first, you have the right to feel how you feel. Number two, you're not alone. And number three, I acknowledge on behalf of everybody, the entire world, that we hurt people.
Yeah.
We hurt people.
You're making
And
me emotional.
I want you to take care of yourself. Don't disconnect. And I'm not talking church now. When I say don't disconnect, I'm not talking about don't disconnect from the church, but don't disconnect from life.
Yes.
Find people around you. Find people who will support you. Find people who will love you. Find people who are going to be in your corner.
Yes.
That's the first thing I want to say to you. And you heard me mention, if you listen to the top of the show, I introduced myself as someone who is enjoying life. And I'm not enjoying life because no trauma has happened. I'm enjoying life because in spite of the fact that trauma has happened. And I'm enjoying life because I have to take charge of my life. I'm not letting anybody now dictate what happens to me going forward.
Yeah.
That's it.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Tana says it's so helpful to hear that there's a bodily response that is to some extent beyond our control, because there are things that still affect me and I feel like I should be over it.
No, can I jump in and respond to that, Tana? So years and years and years and years, it's kind of like going back to this idea of that trigger. So there's this path that's been worn into our neurochemical life, and it's like dropping a marble, right? You get a little hole, a track that's going through your grass, and you drop a marble. The marble doesn't go to the rest of the grass, does it? It goes right down the path that's been worn. And that's how we are designed. We're designed for sameness. And so when those things are happening, you've not done anything wrong. Now, our goal ultimately is, okay, how do we get to the point when I drop the marble that because that path that's there, by the way, guys, that path that's there, we cannot unmake that path. Everybody talks about building it up and filling it in. No, we can't do that. What we can do is we can weave another path. So then we drop the marble, it doesn't go down that one anymore. It goes down another.
That's so
So,
good.
so Tana, yeah, what you're experiencing, it happens to all of us.
I think what you just said there at the end is so powerful, Dwayne, about that it's not about fixing that path, but it's about creating a new one. And I think that is a message that needs to be heard. Um, because I think we spend a lot of time, too much time, energy, effort, attempting to fill that other path, and in so doing, not seeing results, and therefore feeling defeated, feeling less than. So good.
For sure, for sure. Awesome.
Well,
All
Dr.
right.
Dwayne, it is 9:15. I could take up way too much of your time, and I'm not going to. Is there anything that you, coming into this, you and I talked about the topic and everything. Is there anything that maybe that you had thought you wanted to say that you haven't had a chance to yet, or anything from the conversation you just want to kind of put a bow on for for our listeners. This has been so good for my soul, and I'm so happy and grateful for you. But is there anything you would like to kind of share with us or kind of close with?
Oh, sure, sure. For everyone, um, broken people always need community. In fact, whole people need community. And this community, that Don is building is an amazing place to come and to talk and to ask questions, right? There's no judgment here. There is only your ability to connect with his guests and connect with him. So I encourage you, come on back. Go, if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe. Like this, share it with your family, share it with your friends, and let them know that that Don is building this community, because it's so much needed for us to be able to move forward. Because if you want to, because people say if you want to go somewhere, go by yourself, but if you want to go far, go with other people. Well, here's a great community for you to go with. And so jump on board and get in here. And if you see me out there, I am a broken person as well. And we can all build, and we can all learn, and we can all grow together, and move forward. And we don't have to stay stuck. We can be unstuck. And this is a perfect place to begin doing that. And I so enjoyed being here, Don. Thank you for having me. Can you let me do a couple of shout outs if you don't mind?
100%. Do it.
So Tana, so Don, you're going to invite me back. I'm telling you that, by the way. And I would love to be on with her, because I enjoyed just listening to her, and Dave as well. Janet, Cheryl, some of my folks who came through. I saw Callie earlier. Callie, thank you for being here. And let's see who else we have up there. I'm gonna go all the way back. So Janet, Callie, and they've been talking in the chat. Thanks you guys for stopping by and hanging out with us. I told them today that I was gonna be here, and I really appreciate you all coming over and supporting me and supporting Don. And Don, thank you for being here. And I'm sure your wife is back there somewhere typing stuff. So thank her as well.
She does 90% of the work. Dwayne, when I asked you if you had something to say, I was not expecting you to hype up our channel, but that doesn't surprise me. That's what you chose to do. I'm so grateful for you. Where can people find you? Where can people access your stuff? Because I'm sure folks, after watching this, are going to want to hear more.
Yeah, so Dwain Woode MD, Dwain Woode MD is my channel. It's here on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram by the same place, Twitter, TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook. If you want to send me an email, Dwoode, so DWOODE at Dwain Woode MD. So if you basically put Dwain Woode MD in anything, then you'll find me.
Awesome. It has been an absolute honor and pleasure. I can't express my gratitude enough. This was so good for me. I'm not sure how much the audience got out of it. I'm assuming a lot, but I got a lot out of it. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters. No, that's not all that matters. But thank you so much. Thank you, folks, for joining and watching. I hope that you have a beautiful rest of your week. We will be back Monday night, and then again Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you want to stop by, join us and listen in, and your questions are always welcome. So thank you. I hope you have a great evening, and we'll talk to you soon.